Hello. Welcome to the second episode of the Indo Colombian experience. I highly appreciate your feedback and comments on the previous one, and we will continue the discussion in a later episode. Today, I wish to bring to the front a topic that many of us have probably heard about without really understanding the implications on everyday life. An ongoing humanitarian crisis in Venezuela, a beautiful country in the north of South America with a vibrant music, food, and tourist culture. An approximate population of 29 million people. The native language is Spanish, although there are 30 indigenous languages as well recognized by the constitution. So, till a few years back, it was one of the richest countries on the continent. But for the last 5 years, it has been facing a dire humanitarian crisis. Almost 5 million people have had to leave their homes and families behind just to survive and fight for basic necessities. So, politically, there is a huge divided view as to what led to this situation. Many blame the socialist regime of President Maduro and his predecessor, Hugo Chavez, but others blame the US and its allies through like economic sanctions and what they've they are famous for to bring democracy to nations with valuable resources. In this case, Venezuela, if you don't know, has the largest petroleum reserves in the world, even greater than Saudi Arabia. So today's discussion is an attempt to filter through the political and power game narrative and explore the story from an individual's point of view and how it has affected the common people. I would like to present our guest, Mario Cardoso. He is from Caracas, the capital city of Venezuela. He left the country back in 2017 and went to Ecuador for a government project with the Ministry of Education of Ecuador. And that is where we met in the capital of Ecuador in Quito. We shared a lot of time together. We lived together for a while and
Mom.
shared some amazing experiences. And today he is here to share his story, to give us an insight into what really happened and the situation now with this exodus or migration. So, Mario, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Hello, Shabam. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you all the people that are watching and connecting to us in the podcast. And I'm really happy to be here. Really happy to see you again, my friend. So let's do it.
So, how have you been? You are in Ecuador, right? In Montanita. So, tell us a little bit about where you are right now and what are you up to these days?
Yeah, as you said, and we met each other in here in Ecuador. You keep traveling, and I stayed here. My mission here in Ecuador was to start a new life from scratch zero, and you saw a little bit of that process.
Yeah. Mhm.
And right now, yeah, I'm in Montañita. It's in the coast of Ecuador, just in front of the Pacific Ocean. And I'm living and working here. I have a project and that I am developing as a hostel. I have a tiny hostel just in front of the Pacific Ocean. And this is the way that I'm starting a new life here in Ecuador.
I have been to that hostel and I would like to share a glimpse of the hostel with our listeners and viewers. Can you just show us
Oh,
where you
yeah,
are
sure.
located? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. This is a beautiful day today, actually. So let me put the camera there. Wait to see. Yeah. So can people can appreciate where are we? Where am I now? Just in
It's
front of the ocean.
looks really nice.
Yeah, surrounded by palm trees. It's
Yeah.
the type of life that you want to have after living in
Always.
Venezuela.
This is the kind of life you want to have always, no matter what
Yeah,
stage of life you're in.
yeah. Actually, yes. Everyone want to have this life, and I can say to people that if you want to have this life, it's actually easy. You just have to do it.
Yeah, it takes like difficult. You have to sometimes go through like difficult situations, through struggles. But if you have a clear vision, like you want to be here, so I guess it's possible. More so today because like everything now is digital. You can always work remotely, so it's an option now.
Yeah, totally. You need to have a straight vision. And coming from a person that, well, have tough situations in life, that's the most important thing. You have your brain, and that's the creator of your reality. Yeah.
So like I want to like start by like understanding like how was your situation when you left Venezuela back in 2017? What made you leave there and arrive in Ecuador? And how was that transition?
Yeah. Well, back in 2017, the situation and my personal situation back there in Venezuela was tough situation. The country was already the economy was already completely broke. The institutions there didn't work. The society also was broken. The politicians were corrupted and still are corrupted. And it was a high oppression by the authorities against the people who stood against the government. And I fought there many times in the protest. Many people can see the videos in YouTube about it. I was there. I saw how the authorities shot against Venezuelans just because we wanted to have a better life and put a stop to all the corruption and the hard life that they put us to live there, you know.
What was the
Uh,
reality of the violence like there at that time?
the violence was extreme violence, not only in the for the authorities against the people, but also this society in Venezuela is extremely violent. And you have a lot of insecurity on the street, you have a lot of robs, you have a lot of just killings on the street. And for example, every night I used to hear gunshots, and I used to live in a good area, but
Mhm.
gunshots were part of everyday living there. Um, you cannot walk at night in Venezuela. I started to really enjoy nightlife here in Ecuador, because in Venezuela you can go outside few nights if you have the money to do that, but it's extremely dangerous, and you have to do it really, really conscious about the dangers that you put in yourself to. You don't realize that about it until and I didn't realize about it until I get out of the country and I saw that, wow, life could be so much easier and
Mhm.
happier, you know, not have this oppression inside of you that someone is going to come and kill you and kidnap you and rob you and do bad things against you.
But like
uh,
people would like get into homes, like enter homes forcefully, or like if
yeah,
you go
totally.
out on the street.
Yeah, people can enter to your homes. I met few of my friends, and they had robbery inside their houses also. People get entered the houses with guns, they wake you up, and well,
I,
they try
I,
to do what they have to do there, take
I
away your stuff.
I imagine the situation has worsened since you left Venezuela.
Actually, from what I hear about Venezuelans, some of them inside the country, they say that the country is so in ruins right now that there is not so much crime, because all the
There's
the crime
nothing.
rates,
There's nothing
there
to
is
steal
nothing.
anymore.
Yeah, and the
Maybe.
people who used to steal and the felonies just went out of the country also, and that's bad also, because they're putting the reputation of the Venezuelan really low, because if you were a criminal in Venezuela, you still are outside Venezuela. So
Right.
sometimes I sadly hear histories about Venezuelans in other countries, including in Ecuador, and committing felonies, and it's a
How,
stain for all Venezuelans.
but how has that image like affected you in being in Ecuador? I remember like whenever like we were together like out in the market or in the plaza, people always were curious like what is happening. They kind of came to us like to talk to you about what is going on in Venezuela, but not from a point of empathy, but like to get some like gossip in a way, like so Venezuela is in ruins and like so what are you kind of doing about it? And did you face like racism of that kind being there in Ecuador?
No, no, never in Ecuador I faced racism or nothing at all about that. Xenophobic? No, not because we in the town that we used to live, people were really wide and open and friendly and always helping to us. But thankfully, and I had a great experience in Ecuador. People is great here for me. It's this country opened their arms for me. I'm really happy for that and give me an opportunity of developing myself and develop my project. Met some amazing people, Ecuadorians. I know that some Venezuelans actually passed through that, but my mindset was never paying attention to that. I was never looking for xenophobic against me. I was always looking for and friendly actions towards him, and I had it a lot.
And plus,
So
like, and
I also I
unless,
believe that it's maybe a mindset of the people. It happens, yes, but if you have that mindset that always someone is coming to you with xenophobic, you of course will have that because you are bringing that to you.
and plus, if you're not committing any crime or like you're not involved in any wrongful action, I don't think people have a
That
reason to like to accuse you or
that's
like to.
completely true. That's completely true because remember, we came to Ecuador and to be English volunteer English teachers in public schools. We actually came to this country to help, and I
Right.
really believe that from the beginning, I'm helping this country. Even with this project that I am involved right now, I'm helping and developing this country first with children and now the tourism. So I'm also giving to Ecuador part of me.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. Like the kind of help we received at different points. We were there, like I was there in Ecuador, and I would really have to appreciate like the Ecuadorian people. Like they're really nice.
Yeah. Well,
And
but back to the question that you said to me, how was the situation? Well, beside all the violence and crime rates, and we also had a strong, difficult economic situation in
mhm.
Venezuela. I used to have also a company with my brother and one of my best friends, and we struggled to 3 years with that company. Struggle because we actually achieved many of our goals, but the economy never helped. And by the end of 2017, I was just watching how my company could not survive. I didn't give my company the chance of having another year because it was going to be impossible. And plus the personal situation is really depressing when you're in that situation, something that you struggle and you fight so much in your country, because I fight to be my license in the university, after that my master degrees that I could not have it because the economy took it away from me. I cannot continue doing that. All my friends leaving the country, personal relationships broke also for that. So you say, no, this is not the place of living. Everything was crumbling down in Venezuela in every level. So I took the decision. It's a hard decision also, and I just want people to know that leaving the country, leaving everything behind, leaving your family, your friends, your custom, everything that you fought for, it's a strong decision. It's a
And when
strong decision,
it's forceful, like you didn't really
and
want to do it. Like it wasn't like a choice you
you
wanted to
have you
make.
have to do it. You just have to do it
Yeah.
because you want a better life for yourself.
You do
You
it
don't
now
want
or
to
like
do.
a couple of months later or a year later, like people like who stayed back in Venezuela at that time, like they left at some point.
Yeah, actually, I don't have no family and no friends in Venezuela right now. All of them around the world.
So like I want to like understand because what I used to hear at like earlier a decade ago, like at least, like Venezuela used to be like one of the richest countries in South America, right?
Yes,
And
used
like
to be, and it still is actually, but
in
it's
terms of
all still.
resources.
Yeah, in terms of resources, it is. Yes, of course.
But like where do you feel like the downturn began? Like is the entire narrative around the ex-president Hugo Chavez, like how real it is, like how was it during the early 2000s perhaps?
Well, actually, the ex-president Chavez, the foreign president that he's already dead, he came to power just because at the time the system of Venezuela was already corrupted. It wasn't like this, of course. It still was a powerful country in '98. In that time when Chavez came, of course, we have inflation, we have crime rates, and the institutions were not so much trustworthy. And he was a result of the bad politicians at that time also, and he came to power just because he took all the weakness, and the um, people there was angry about the government, and he take that for him. He spoke to the people that the foreigner governments never spoke to, and he came to power as a populist.
But do you think
And
like he kind of manipulated the anger and the desperation of the people to reach
totally,
power?
he was a master of manipulation.
Yeah, but
He
like
was a
before he became president, what I understand is like there was like a capitalist elite ruling the country. So the economic divide was so huge. Like they didn't really relate to the larger common population or even the poor population in Venezuela. And he
that
came
is
as a
true.
representative of those people. So always
Yeah,
there's a conflict when people in power or with money are replaced by person like you say populist in this case. Like he did
yeah,
come with a socialist agenda, and he
yeah.
was
It,
close
it
to
was like that.
Castro's. Like with Cuba, he had like really good connections as well. Like he
Yeah,
took
but
that.
but sadly, he tried to change that. But when you have a regime like that, it only changed for them. They didn't like, and Venezuelans, and the most popular parts of Venezuela, popular in quotes, the poor parts of Venezuela, didn't like the elite. But the elite is still there, just with different faces. And now those faces are the faces of this government that Chavez represented and create.
And like he did create certain social programs, or he took initiatives to alleviate those people out of poverty, and give them like some sense of dignity, I guess, like and like narrow the gap, like economic gap. But
He did.
like how did he do it, and like what went wrong there? Like it was a good vision, I guess.
Of course, it was a good vision. Well, you can make it better if you have a better vision of how to make people better in ways of develop themselves in in the brain. But they the people was already victimized by the system, and he took those victims and make them more victims, giving them the social aids. The social aids for a period of time work in some places, but from the beginning was completely rotten because corruption was there. So he tried to help people with giving them food in popular markets, but those popular markets were still from the private companies. So you're giving to someone to you're stealing to give to the people, so these people became poor, and that's start a change of reaction. Every Sunday, he he stood on his program. He had a program
On
every
the national
Sunday.
television, I guess it
Yeah,
was broadcasted. Uh-huh.
called I think Allo Presidente,
Yeah, yeah.
and
I've seen a couple of speeches. Like he was a really good actor, I would say.
he was a really charismatic person. He was, and he knows how to control people. He's a master of the lies. He was, and with his charismatic, he can convince people, and he did well, convince some part of the people. But every Sunday he closed private companies to give them to the people. But the result was that from there, around 2005 to 2013, he was completely killing
Private
the
sector.
national production of
Yeah.
food, of goods, and factories. because you give the companies to people that they don't know how to do
True.
with those
Yeah,
companies,
right.
and the companies just
You're killing the
disappear,
productivity, like you're killing the output
killing the
without
productivity.
any
Yes,
new
and
input.
it happened with the first company in Venezuela, the one that produced the oil, PDVSA.
Mhm.
Before Chavez, PDVSA was in the top 10 companies around the world. But in 2002, the the company start protesting against Chavez and the politics because he wanted to took the company, and he fired all the people that were in that company and put people like
His
you
own
and me
people.
that we don't have nothing to do with oil. We are not oil engineers. So right now that company, well, from 2002 to 2020, now the you just said that we have in Venezuela the
More
largest
oil
oil
reserves.
reserves, but we are importing gas from Iran, exchanging it for gold because Venezuela cannot trade right now in the market with dollars because you know that
Yeah, yeah.
to
The US
buy or
has
sell
sanctions
yeah,
against
no,
you.
but to buy and sell oil you need to do it only in United States dollar,
Dollars.
US dollars. And Venezuela is doing that with gold
Right.
right now. So that explains to you how the country that have the largest oil reserve is buying actually gas and gasoline to another country. Why? Because they destroy the national production
But
of
like
gas.
while that was happening, because I saw a couple of videos of that, like Sunday, like week Sunday program, Alo Presidente, where he used to just announce publicly without any proper procedure or like discussion, like he would just grab properties and assets like private companies and just like fire people and give them to like even in case of like properties like houses and land, he would just
Yeah, yeah.
do the same. So like I guess like there were enough people in Venezuela at that time as well who realized like this is gonna end up like really bad for the country, for the economy. So how come
Yeah.
like he was able to get a second term into power, like if all of this shit was happening?
Well, that's really foggy to say, because you have and he control all the in democracy you have three powers, and one of those powers is electoral power, and he controls that. So in Venezuela was not a strictly country,
Democratic.
democratic country, because he control all the powers that have to be separated and independent. And so the electoral power, the ones who makes the election, he controls that power. So we really don't know if he wants or not those elections, because at that time he had already a lot of opposition. So maybe it was a fraud, or maybe not. The second one, because the rest of them, it was proven that was a fraud.
But even after that, when he got sick, he was diagnosed with cancer. He died of cancer, right?
Yeah,
And he recommended Nicolas Maduro, the current president, who many at that time were surprised and also accused, like, how come you're choosing a guy who has no like political experience at that level? Like he was he used to drive a bus
yeah, he
just
was a
before
bus
he.
driver.
Yeah, so like how did like even after all that like Maduro got into power, like knowing that Chavez was not to be trusted, and like he has continued the Chavez's legacy for the last 7 years.
Well, he continued the legacy. The legacies make the country poorer and poorer every time, and the strategic is that the elite stay there, sucking all the resources of Venezuela. And I mean the elite, not only the Chavista elite, because the opposition of Venezuela, if you can call them like that, they also playing a game there, and they have their part of the cake. So I also realized about it before leaving the country that you really cannot trust no one. The opposition is there just making the game for the government, and they're taking their part also. So yeah, Maduro came to power also. I don't know, and people don't know if he really wants the elections there. And it was a huge problem in Venezuela. At that time, he was competing against Enrique Capriles Radonsky. And Capriles Radonsky just said, don't do nothing. Because he had the power in that time to send the people to the streets and make everything possible to get the truth about the elections
Like he
and
had
make him
absolute
president.
power.
Yeah, people were completely upset about it. He was just to say, yes, let's go to the street and let's fight for this. What he said, no, stay down your houses, grab your pen and pot and hit it with the spoon. That's your protest. Then you realize that this guy has not the balls to run the country. And everything goes after Maduro because Chavez tried to hold a little bit the things, and he had the power because he built around him and a strong wall. He has a South America with him. He has the non-allied countries with him. He has the Caribbean islands with him. So he was making a geopolitical progress there that it was really intelligent at that time. But right now, Maduro has no allies. Maybe he has the most strong allies that any government could have, that is China and Russia. But around South America, none country supporting Maduro.
China and Russia are also with him because, like, of their own interests, like, geopolitical interests. Not
Yeah,
like they are
totally.
really like friends.
Yeah,
Although, like, some of the things that Chavez did, like to establish relationships when he was president, like for example with the Argentina, so that helped people during the migration process, right? Like Argentina was one of the few countries that opened doors and, like, in terms of legalization and documentation for people
yeah.
who were moving to Argentina.
One of the best countries that helped Venezuelans in that process was Argentina, yes. But
And
Argentina, that's another history, really. It's a large history there. We helped them in a part of the history, and after that, they become really close allies. But as any country of South America, they have their problems right now, huge problems.
right, but like when the Venezuelan economy was booming with petrodollars, like,
Everyone was friend of Venezuela right, that time,
and
of
like
course.
Chavez did like sell like cheap oil to many countries to
He not
will
only sell cheap oil, he give the oil. He
for
just
free
give the oil to Cuba, yeah, for free to Cuba, and he exchange oil for cows
for
with
medicine as well, as
for
like.
medicine aid, of course,
Mhm.
and for food. And it was the perfect strategic for him. He was the power. He had the power at the time, the money and the power, and the other countries just even Ecuador rise with Chavez at power because he helped a lot. The foreign president Rafael Correa,
Mhm.
he took a lot of money from Venezuela and he developed part of the country here because Ecuador developed in his um, when he was a president, the country developed some infrastructure
Mhm.
thanks to the Chinese and thanks also to Venezuela. It was huge corruption there, of course, and people here in Ecuador is really upset about it, but that's part of the history.
Yeah, I think
Everyone
that.
is your friend when you have money.
Yeah, and money to give.
And money to give, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so, like, your parents, they were working, like your father was working in with a construction company
No,
here.
no, no. He was an importer. He
Okay.
worked in a import company from goods from Italy.
Okay.
And yeah, the government stopped that, because for have importation to the country, you need to have a permission, special permission for the government, and those products and are not necessary for the economy of Venezuela. So the company just broke.
Like that was part of the nationalization process. Like everything has to be done by the government.
Kinda, yes. You could see it like that, but and the government control because you cannot have dollars in Venezuela. Not you as a, well, actually right now dollars is circulating in Venezuela, but at that time the only way that you can have dollars is to ask to the government. And if you are a private company and you're importing something around the world, you need to have a permission. And those goods from Italy were not important to the Venezuelan economy,
Not essentials.
not essentials. Yeah.
Okay.
So they stopped that, and the economy and the company just came down. And a lot of companies came down with that. And of course, that was all part of the corruption because they hold all the dollars for them.
But like, so when you made that transition, like that decision to leave Venezuela and come here, like, but your family was still there, right?
Yeah,
So,
I was the first one in my family that came out of the country.
so what were your expectations? What were you expecting when you came to Ecuador?
I was just having an adventure because my mindset completely changed when I came to Ecuador, because I came here with the mindset of Venezuela. Let's work, let's do it really quickly and really fast. And I came to this country and I realized that actually life should not be like that. Always running, taking care of yourself. Someone is going to rob you. You have to do things quickly, and you need to buy food. You need to gather food. No, you need to enjoy life. So when I came here, I just was like, let's see what's going on. I just came, let's surprise me. I just knew that Ecuador had the capital Quito and Guayaquil, but when I came to this country, I was really, really surprised, and it was a really positive change for me.
Like,
I started to enjoy more life.
but like,
Life
was
gave me a second opportunity of living it fully.
but I guess like personally you were in a better situation, but your family was still there back in Caracas. Like, how was that dynamic? Like, because I've heard like people were like surviving with very little money because of hyperinflation, the value of like the savings people had in their banks, and the salaries had dropped to like crazy lows, like $7, $10 a month. That was the monthly salary. So how
Right?
was your
Yeah.
family doing
When I was
dealing with
there, yeah.
that?
When I was there, it was around $7-10 a month. Right now, it's around $2 a month. It's like that. But when I was here and my family were in Venezuela, of course, I helped them and sent them money. And it's tough because you start enjoying life and seeing life from a different point of view, that actually life is not that suffering every day in Venezuela, that you wake up, you open your eyes and you hit by bad news, and you go to bed and you hit by bad news all day. Bad news, bad news, bad news, bad news. And it's really gets in your mind, and you get in a state of depression and a high alert and angry, and you feel that in the all the population. And when I was here, I was dropping all those feelings and starting to be more happy and more prosper and having dollars and working. And when you talk to your family, they still are telling you the same histories. Everything's going wrong,
Same
everything's going
story
wrong,
every day.
and so you cannot have a balance there. I tried to help them, but I also was extremely worried about them.
Yeah, so like what was how like to me it's very difficult to understand how people like at $7 or $10 or now at $2, how is it actually working? Like, how do people, because I've seen videos on YouTube like showing like completely empty supermarkets, right?
Yeah.
And what I've heard, like there are certain programs like in terms of food and like there are no medicines. So how is it like the people like, so 5 to 6 million people have gone out of the country, but the people who are still there, what is really happening?
What is really happening, and what I saw was sadly the worst part of that history is people eating garbage. You don't have money, you cannot survive, and you start searching food for in the garbage, and that happened. And the most strong part is that when I saw people eating from the garbage, it wasn't poor people. They didn't have bad clothes. They have regular jeans, a t-shirt, and you just said, whoa, the economy is falling so quickly that they just got you in some, you get in this situation that you just have to be eating garbage. Fortunately for me, I was not in that position, but I was extremely afraid to get there. And as I told you, I had my company there, and the company helped me to survive and surf the economy and the hyperinflation. That the hyperinflation, let me tell you, is the one of the worst things that you can have in your life, because it takes you away your hope. Every time you go to the supermarket, you see it more empty, and the little stuff that you have there every week get
The
higher
price.
price, higher price, higher price, higher price, and you still have the same money. Wow, it's really tough. It's really tough. So how people survive there?
Like on an on
Struggling.
like on like let's consider a time when like in like in 2017 18 when we were there in Ecuador, and like if someone is earning like $10 and like a kilo of meat alone costs almost like the entire month's salary, if I'm
Yeah.
like you know so how are people like really eating or like managing medicines?
At that time, between 2015 and 2017, around 60% of the population lose and around 13 kilograms because they cannot eat. And you saw that reaction in yourself and in your neighbors. You see them more skinny with more dirty clothes, and you start realizing that everything around you is getting worse and worse. And you see people, I mean, people can survive eating less, but you see the reaction, people getting skinnier and skinnier and losing weight and eating from the garbage and selling stuff or trying to survive doing their regular job and another or 10 different jobs, because I knew and I was part of that. And people in Venezuela used to have at least one regular job and two irregular jobs just to maintain themselves to have food.
And you
The
can't
food was
you
main
still couldn't
priority
eat,
in Venezuela.
like even with three
No,
jobs you couldn't
I
eat well.
no, I mean I used to live with my dad and my mom, and I had a company. All of us working. You open the fridge and you don't have food there. Why you don't have food there? Because first of all, it's extremely expensive, and second of all, and the most sad is that you go to the supermarket and you cannot find food. So that's a really another level of being poor, that you had the money to buy. Thankfully, I had it because the three of us working and myself had a company that helped me. But you go to the supermarket and you don't have goods to buy. That
Wow.
was the situation, and it's oh man, it's really depressing, and you get desesperated because you know it's not your fault. You're working,
Right.
you're doing everything that you have to do, but the system is not helping you. And when you go out to the streets to yell to the government that this is not the way that I want to live, they start shooting you, and they shot at people. And you can see the videos on YouTube and everywhere how they shot people. And not only that, and the authorities there torture people, torture.
Like the political dissidents or like even common
Yeah,
people participating in the
the
protest
common people,
just to
torture common
create
people,
fear. Like,
and they did.
like did that experience like intrinsically or like internally change you as a person?
Of course,
Like
it changed you as a person, and because, well, in a way, makes you more stronger. And now I came here to Ecuador, and people say that they have here a crisis. They have a kind of crisis, but for me, it's really easy.
but
And you have a mindset.
that's a
Uh,
global crisis, so like everyone like like it's going around like the world, and it's going to be okay in a couple of months perhaps. Like now, like most of the economies are recovering, although they have gone like
well,
India.
coronavirus was totally different history, something that never happened before, and it for us and for my business right now in Ecuador was shocking. But I had the school from Venezuela, so I survived this and my business also. But What I'm telling you is the crisis, not for the coronavirus, but for this country, about this country. And actually, this job that I have right now makes me realize that everywhere in the world, everyone is complaining about everything. Even Germans, Italians, Americans, Canadians, everyone complain. But the situation in Venezuela, you have two options when you live a strong situation like that. You can grow up that situation and make yourself a better person, stronger person, or you can be weaker and
Complain, get depressed, and like
complaining.
just go
Yeah,
down in the
yeah,
dumps.
yeah, and let the situation take you and feel yourself as a victim. That was not my option. My
Victimization,
option
yeah.
was, let's try to make this situation, hard situation, transform it to make it me better as a person.
And uh, I think we have like seen that. Like I have personally seen that when when like our project got cancelled, and we were left without money, and like the day like you had, I think, like $2, the last $2 left,
Yeah,
and yeah, it was like just becoming impossible to even like buy food, you know like.
yeah,
And I mean, you, like you said, you were worried perhaps like a lot at that time, but you kind of maintained your calm.
well,
It
you saw me. I don't know. Inside, I was really like, wow, this is a tough situation. I'm in a foreigner country. I don't have money. Have no one to ask for money. And I'm in a little town that I will not get any a good job here. But outside, you tell me how it was.
Yeah, you were like, I well, I knew it was a bad situation, so it wasn't like, you didn't tell me and I didn't know. Like, we knew like what was the reality. Although, like, I would really appreciate the people who helped us that time, like the guy who rented out
Totally.
his house, like, and we, like, forgave us the rent,
Yeah.
and all the other people, like that lady that where we used to go to eat, like lunch and
Yeah.
dinner, always asking
Yeah.
for a little more, like in the same
Yeah. Yeah.
price.
Totally.
Yeah, like people do come together to help you. Like that was the beauty of that town, I guess. It was like
Totally.
a small place,
They
but like,
help us.
and you know, I never knew. I myself probably didn't respect the profession of teaching before I had that experience in Ecuador, and saw like people gave you so much respect without even knowing you as a person, just because you are a teacher. So
Yeah.
yeah, that was a humbling experience. Like we almost all people wanted just like get to know us. They would invite us for food, and we were kind of like in a bad,
Respect.
yeah, bad financial situation. But yeah, people kind of took care of us. Especially that, you remember that night when it was really raining bad and we had nothing at home to eat, and these two women like suddenly showed up at the door and brought us food.
Yeah.
I
Totally,
mean,
man.
yeah, that was
Yeah.
kind of a very karmic thing. Yeah, because
Totally karmic. You see that, okay, universe is not leaving me alone here.
yeah,
There
because
is always an opportunity.
I like, even in India, it's like people are not that helpful, like just to help you. Like they mostly have some like interest in their mind, like to get out of you. But in that little town, like people just used to help each other without expecting anything. And so this woman, she had come to the house once, and she was doing an English course or something, and she had asked for my help, like to correct some papers, some of her notes. And then at the end of it, she asked me like, how much would I charge for that work? And I was like, we don't do that here in Markaveli. And yeah, and I really meant it, because for me it was like really nothing. It didn't take away anything from me.
Yeah,
And
that's a good thing. I think Markabeli for me also showed me that being in a little town, you people in the town are more human, more friendly, more open to help each other, and that's why also I decided to come to Montañita, also a little town, because I already knew that tiny towns can make you more human.
because there's
not
a
in a
sense of
big
community.
city. Yeah, it's a sense of community, not like in a big city that everyone is doing their own thing and everyone is worried about their interests. Now, a small town, you get to know your neighbor and the problems of your neighbor, and your neighbor is, you ask for help, he gives you help, and now you know you have to help him or you need to help the other one, and it's a change, and everyone it's connecting with each other
Right.
in some way. I'm not mean that it's perfect, but you feel more friendly and more human touch in little towns.
Yeah, like that connection, that human connection that we see is missing in like larger cities. And I think
Totally.
like a lot of people are have kind of realized, like, that uh 10 to 15, 20 million people, like there are even cities with up to 25, 30 million people living in one city.
It's
It's
too
not
much.
it's not a good way of life.
It's not
Honestly.
a real life. You don't have contact, real contact, not even with nature, not with your neighbors, and it's really consuming life.
Yeah. And yeah, anyways, getting back to the point where like this entire transition happened, your parents were still there and you lost your passport, right?
Yeah,
And
actually, we meet it at that time.
yeah, it kind of overlapped. So how was that experience where, like, you are in a foreign country, your like background where you come from is already against you in a way, and you lose your passport, which at that time was very difficult to make a new one because the
And it still is.
Venezuelan, and it still is. And then you had some time, like, because you were not getting any work because you didn't have the official papers, like the work permit, I guess. And now you have all the legal status, your documents are in order, but that entire transition, how was that journey? Because like
Well,
why I ask you is like because this topic of immigration being illegal in a country has, like, because like we see a lot of it happening in the US, and even in Europe, like migration from the Middle East. So like I want to understand like the human side of it, like, apart from just the document and the bureaucracy, like what a person goes through when it happens.
first of all, you realize that, well, I don't think no immigrant wants to be illegal. I was an illegal immigrant also because I lose my papers and by time because I get my passport again, but I stayed here in Ecuador.
It
The
expired, I
program that
think.
it expired, yeah, it
Right.
expired, and when it expired, it took me to the reality of being an illegal immigrant. It's a tough situation. It's a tough situation. No one wants to be there, and you are not there because you want to be there. You're just there because, well, in my case, I say, well, life put me in this position. I need to figure out what to do now. And yes, it's a tough situation because you cannot get job. Even in this tiny town, at that time, the officials of the government were really starting to get more tight about Venezuelans, and they came to work when I was working and said to me, you are not legal here, get out. And whoa, it was really tough. um, you cannot get job. When you cannot get job, you will not have a place to live and and eat. No one wants to be in the situation. Regarding to your question, also, you want to know how I get my papers or how was the situation?
How did you manage that situation, like, because I guess like at that time a couple of other friends were also there in Montanita,
Yeah.
and who, like, because I think these kind of situations kind of unite people who are coming from the same place. And like how did you manage to get out of that, and maintain, like, get some work, and maintain, like, stay alive basically.
Well, I came here to Montañita with friends, and I also met my couple right now, Yula. She helped me a lot at that time. And you realize also it's a tough situation when you don't have papers, but also you say, well, the world should be more open about people in this situation. The world belongs to the people that wanna work and walk in the world, in the world. But you have some, it seems stupid sometimes, all those rules and regulations about you cannot work here, you cannot do this, you cannot do that. Man, just let me work, just let me
Earning
live. I
minimum
came
wage. It's not even like,
any, not even that. They put you way down minimum wage just because they're taking advantage for you, just because you are an illegal immigrant. And you just say, hey, I just want to work, I just want to have a life. Is it really important to have this piece of paper? Are you fucking kidding me? And I had a lot of help. Yeah. And I was with my friends here in Montañita also that were in the same situation, and we help each other and we stay together, helping each other, living by the day. I mean, it was a time in my life that I used to live with $6 a day, and I eat the 3 times a day. It wasn't the best, but I used to manage that, and had a lot of help also, as I told you, from my couple Yula. She helped me a lot in that situation, and I told her I will someday give you back all the help that you give me. Well, now she's here working with me and developing this project. We are doing this together. And my option also in that situation is, okay, you are in this position. First of all, you have no money, you have no work, you have no papers, you have no one to help you really. And you said, okay, this is not my fault. This is what you have to realize. This is not my fault. Life put me in this position, and the only thing that I need to do is get out of this situation using the tools that I have. What is the tool? The best tool that I have? My body and my brain. Then you force yourself to get some type of idea to get you out of the situation, and makes you better, makes you every time better, work harder, think better, prove yourself. And that's why and ideas start to came. I start to gather with different people. We start to manage different options, and finally, step by step, I could get again, gather the money, pay my legal status again, and start working as normal. As I tell you, the worst mindset that you can have in that situation, being an illegal immigrant, is put yourself in the victim situation. If you put yourself in the victim situation, you just say, oh, somebody help me. And you just wait there like, oh, now what to do? Somebody has to help me. No one is going to help you if you don't help yourself.
I remember.
No. And why you feel like that? Because also, and as a Venezuelan, you feel the word when you have no parent. When you have no parents, I forgot the
Orphan.
word. Orphan. You feel like that because you don't have the support of your government. Now, you don't have money, you don't have the support of your government, your family can help you. Who else is going to help you if you don't help yourself? You need to get the strength out of yourself, and let's say now let's turn this situation up.
So in a way, do you feel like that situation made you like a better person today?
Totally. I will pass through all the situations that I passed before. Totally. It from any situation of your life, you can get a lesson. And you have two options. It can make you weaker, and it can make you stronger and wiser. And that's the choice that I had. I'm going to be strong. I'm going to be wise.
You know, I remember my first like real interaction in terms of like the intensity of that situation. Although we had already lived together by then, is when I went from Ecuador to Colombia. So I went by land and I was crossing the border at Tulcan Ipiales, that border. And so to get into Colombia at the Ecuadorian immigration, it was the same line, like to get in or get out. So a lot of because there was so many people like Venezuelan people moved. So it was like I had to wait like almost 6 hours in the line out in the cold, and I would say like 95% of the people in that line were Venezuelans, and but they were kind of like chilled out honestly, like they were in a really bad situation. Like people were literally crossing on foot, like from Venezuela to Colombia and then to Ecuador. And I don't know like what got into them, or like how they were so strong, but they were like out there in the cold with me, and I was kind of exactly the kind of thing you said. Like I was kind of feeling bad, like, why do I have to stand in line just to get a stamp on my passport? And they were like probably going through worse situation, but they were kind of like so united, and like I think they had gone through so much trouble already, that they like that particular situation, just standing out in the cold and waiting a few hours, like didn't really like matter, or like in comparison what they had already gone through. So it's like, so like the more difficult situations you go through in life, like it kind of prepares you for the next one.
Of course, you realize what is truly important in life. You are not going to be sad because you're, I don't know, you don't have likes in your Facebook or in your Instagram. You get really worried when you don't know that you don't know where you're going to sleep this night. That's a true worry in life. So you put everything in perspective. What
Right.
is really important? And that's another thing. In this type of life, I just give away a lot of weight of a lot of stupid things that society thinks that are important, and no, they're not important. Important things are yourself and your well-being, how you're going to sleep, how you're going to eat, how is your work. And if you have to stay in line like you saw for hours just to get a stamp in your passport and keep going to your destiny to make a better life, you just have to do it without complaining because it's just part of the process.
And
So in a way, maybe a lot of Venezuelans became really stoic about it.
I mean, it it kind of also is important, like your background. For example, you did have a good education, you had the business skills when you came to Ecuador. So those
Yeah.
kind of things did finally help you, because I see when I was there living in Colombia, in Bogota, like it's, I think, one of the highest populations of Venezuelan immigrants like anywhere in the world. And people, like, first of all, like, people are exploiting their situation, like they are charging them insanely expensive rents, just because they know they don't have the papers, so they can, like, they can't even go complain anywhere. But so people used to get into the like public transport system to ask for help, like to sell maybe some candies, cookies, or whatever they could manage.
Yeah.
And once this guy, he entered with notebooks, like they were like really good, like designer notebooks, which were around, you can say, perhaps like $3. So normally no one gives, like, $3 to a person, like, in asking for money. And he said, like, I don't know how to like entertain you guys, like I can't play a guitar, or like, I can't sing, or I can't like do magic, which we generally, like, get entertained by, like, in these situations. And he was a chef, like, and
Mm.
so from going from that profession to selling something in public buses was kind of difficult for him, and he didn't have any like skills to just, like, entertain, like street skills in a way. So he was
Yeah.
selling books. So kind of when we look at immigrants and refugees in a situation, like it's easier to judge, like, why don't you just do something? But we forget, like, the history of where people are coming from.
It's
And
easy to judge, of course, when you are not open, and especially when you're ignorant.
yeah, people like just are worried about their like near environment, like, there's a person, I don't want him in this bus, without really understanding what the story of that person. That is also one of the reasons I wanted to do this podcast, because even in like similar crisis situations, like in Syria, like in the Middle East majorly, or like things happening between the US Mexican border, like most of the news that we get is about, like, the political game that is happening, like at the higher level. But it's very difficult to understand what people are going through. So,
Mhm.
like, So that is why kind of we take that news as some form of entertainment without really understanding the stories of the people and difficulties of the people, which don't let us really connect with the situation when we see those people in our faces. So it's important, like, people, like, you are sharing your story today, and maybe, like, we have, I'm sure, like, there are millions of stories, everyone with their own, like, version of what happened to them. So yeah, I would like people to come forward and share their stories. What do you feel is, like, where do you see this situation going? Because I've met people when I was in Peru as well, and Venezuelans. I don't know if before the crisis they were so proud to be Venezuelans, but they are now. Like, they are always like, my country and everything, and people want to go back. But do you think people will go back if given the option?
Well, I think everyone is proud of being their own nationality, but especially Venezuelans, we used to be really proud about that because, of course, the richest country, the beautiful woman, the resources, the high economic, the good education, and the history that, yeah, we free half of Latin America 2,000 years ago from the Spanish. We fought the war, and all those countries. If it wasn't for Venezuela, they would not exist. Yeah, you have to. They are really proud. I came out of the country as humble as I can, and I became a citizen of the world, really, because because my experience here in Ecuador is not only with Ecuadorians. Most of my experience is foreigners. From the beginning, the first night I was sitting down with five different nationalities, and I live with you that you're from India, so that makes me open my mind a lot and say, lines are just created. Hey, all good. Lines are just created for division.
But
But
that
as you
that
talk, as you
that
ask
that
me, I don't think me myself, I'm not going to back to Venezuela in many years. That's not even if the new government starts. Myself, my option is not going there because I already learned what I have to learn in Venezuela, and my mentally state right now is get as much experience as you can from all around the world. A
like, do
lot
you
of
feel like
Venezuelans will go
going
back.
going back to Venezuela is like taking a step back?
And yeah, right now it's taking a step back. For me, it is because, as I told you, I spent 26 years there. I learned what I have to learn, and life is about that learning, every step learning. And if I got back there, even if I go to help, it will not help me right now. Someday I will go back home, of course. But right now, my mission is to gather as much information and experience as possible. So when I go back to Venezuela, I will help and give truly my good part and my good side there. It will be around 20 years because this government is going to still there. It's not going anywhere right now. Is that government is really tight in power, has strong allies that are sucking the resources. That is not their fault. Is I mean, as I can see, Venezuelans become so weak that they open themselves and let the powers of the world that came and suck all the resources. It's our fault as a society. It's the fault of the politicians, and a lot of people maybe will say, "No, this guy is speaking really bad." No, no. You have to realize the country came down, and everyone should look in the mirror and say, "Okay, what I did wrong here."
But
A lot of people will come back of Venezuela, of course, because it's their home, man, and not and everyone has their own experience and their own vision of the situation. And but me myself, as I told you, no.
because I have heard this narrative as well, in South America, like, that Venezuelans, just because, like, during Chavez, like, he gave away a lot of free stuff, that they are kind of like used to it now, and, like, they are lazy people. Although I have had a different experience with Venezuelans. Like, I find, like, them very hardworking. But do you, like, relate to that? Like, do you agree, like, that is also true in some way? like some Venezuelans also have criticized or like created a form of racism in Ecuador, in Peru, just because people look different. So like they are really proud, like they are more beautiful, and those people in those two countries like are not like as like don't at the same level of appearance. So even though they are coming from a difficult situation, people are taking care of them, but they still have that mindset where like we are still superior.
Well, beauty is in the eyes who looks, starting from there. And yeah, maybe they become a little bit racist about it, but also that comes from, if you see that from a psychological point of view, you have a huge trauma leaving your country and you want to be proud, and you don't realize about the situation that you're in. So instead of realizing about the situation that you're in, you become false proud, and you want to watch everyone like that, like I am best of you, even that you have nothing. Well, those people need to work a lot in their personalities and the develop of their self, because that's not the attitude that one should have. You should go to another country, because I know that happened, but you should go to another country with first humble, because you are not in your house. Even if you are in your country, you should be humble. But a lot of Venezuelans are not like that. And also, you need to understand, when you have a process of immigration as huge as Venezuela, that it's the highest immigration in the continent, in the American continent, in all the history, and the only one is tougher than Venezuela will be Syria, and in that situation was is still going a huge war.
Yeah,
And in
there is
Venezuela
an
was
active war going on.
so,
Like it's
yeah.
not.
So when you have so many people, around 6 million people going out from a country, running away, literally running away, of course you will have every type of person going out. You have good part of Venezuelans and the bad side of Venezuelans going out. So it's also natural that that happens, because it's so massive, so huge, the immigration, that you will see the good side and the bad side. And the bad side is there. We have to acknowledge that it's there.
Yeah, I mean, plus like the emotional state sometimes like doesn't let you think rationally. You kind of
Yeah.
become really
The
impulsive.
and yeah, about the social aids and and also that you need to pay the services in Venezuela. Yeah, we have help, but you cannot ask for that in another country, especially when you don't have no papers. So a lot of people maybe don't use so much their brains, and they don't want to realize about the true situation that they are in.
I mean, yeah,
And
like
also you put yourself there in a position of victim, like, why me, why I have to pay this? You have to pay this because you're a citizen now of that country, and um, you have to fulfill all your actions to become that citizen. You have to do it well. And how is the way that they do it there? Well, you need to do it also. If you don't like it, continue your journey. You already left Venezuela. You left your house. You are going to complain in a place? No, we spent 20 years complaining and then we left. Now, if you don't like the place, that what you learn. If you don't like a place where you're at, go to another place. Is it so difficult now?
no,
No, it's not.
I,
So
I was asking you that because like they those people know like the point you said, like why do we have to pay for utilities, for example, because those are the kind of things that led to the decline of the economy, but they still like, they still are looking to get
yeah,
that.
of
Like,
course they don't know
like
that.
they don't realize like that is the wrong path forward. Like even if they want to
Yeah,
go back to Venezuela at some point, if they again try to create that system, it's gonna collapse again.
it's, it's going to collapse again. That social aid and the help of the government, I forgot the word in English. Um, well,
Socially,
when the yeah, no, well, anyways,
in
when
Spanish,
government is helping, what?
in Spanish.
I also forgot.
Okay. Anyways,
No, we're speaking English. Yeah, anyways, when government is helping you so much, someone is paying for that.
Right.
Money is coming from something.
Somewhere.
So if you don't realize that it's a circle, it's vicious circle, that if nothing comes from free, so that breaks the systems. Countries don't have that because they know that if the government pays for everything, the government and the states will not have the money to keep supporting the economy and the institutions, and will be corrupted. So
But there's
yeah,
also a way to like carry that out, like to have like, even if you are helping people out, like being like through social programs or aids, like, but give them things like, but fairly for their output, I guess. Like, because a lot of people just like got things for free, and then they kind of got used to it, and now
yeah.
they find it difficult, like coming to a different country, like to have to work to maintain that.
I mean, for me, what a government should do is not giving you for free stuff. Should give you the tools for people
Right.
work for those stuff, because
Teach you
you
how to
cannot
fish, don't give
make
you just don't just
of
give you fish.
course teach you how to fish. Yeah, exactly. Because it's not people get it gets be really lazy and they don't use their brain.
And like, what do you think is the path forward for Venezuela from here? Like, do you see it getting
The
resolved?
only path forward, no, for Venezuela to get in a good position, you have to completely wipe out the politicals there, the the pro Maduro and the opposition. You have to completely wipe out the political in Venezuela and start from zero again.
But
Restart
there are two
the
ways to do
system.
that. Like, either like the foreign powers do that, like taking what they need and like leaving Venezuela like in ruins after that, and then leave the people to manage whatever is left. Or like, because right now I don't like, I think the spirit of the people is so broken that they like, the fight is not active anymore against the government. like
It's
like it was
broken.
back in 2017. People were still energetic, they were still fighting, but I don't think like
Yeah,
there's the same
because
fight
people
anymore.
realize that, well, for me, is that people, it's tired of fighting because you will not get nothing from that, because you get mocked by the opposition because you see them. It's part of the game. I mean, this guy, this Guaido guy is just playing the game. He's really extremely corrupted also person. So are you really going to give the power to that person? Are you going really to give the power to someone like Enrique Capriles Radonsky? No, no. You need to completely restart the system. And the people is tired. The people is hungry. The spirit is completely broken. The country is divided, and the country in it's getting empty. 6 million people out. You don't have professionals to carry on the
Right.
economy.
And those
So
6
I
million people are like most of the like the professionals, like you
yeah,
said.
the young, the strong, and
They have gone out.
the one
The
who
skilled,
study.
the skilled.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And actually, speaking with other nationalities, it could be also an strategic, and for me, it's also an strategic. And let's get the people out of this country, making their life miserable, and we can take all the resources for ourselves. And if you see it from that point of view, Taiwan, the war. You have the people that fought against them, that has the young, the strong, they're out outside of the country. They stay there and they keep sucking off the resources of the country.
But even like, if you limit the progress of a country, like there will be a point where you have nothing more to like extract or exploit.
Yeah, but those people don't think about the future. They think about themselves only. And they had a lot of money and power inside. They don't care about Venezuelans. They never did. And they don't care about the country. They care about themselves.
Do you think like a sense of community is developing, like because like your family is now in Europe, they're in Spain, right?
Spain, yeah.
Yeah. And your best friend that I met, Montanita, Jesus, he's in Germany,
Germany, yeah.
and a couple of other friends are like in different places around the world. So, yeah,
Totally. Vietnam,
is
Argentina,
is there like a sense of like international community developing of like Venezuelan people coming together, like maybe what normally happens when people get separated from each other but like they are still connected and they are trying to restore some of that sense of nationality or patriotism, whatever you want to call it. Like,
Yeah,
well, I mean, I
idiosyncrasy.
not in that way, but like what happened to the Jews happened from an external force. So they had they have a different sense of community altogether because they were being exterminated as a community. But this has happened from within within the government, like not by an external force, but by internal force. So people have to just get away from that situation. So do you feel like that sense of like bringing things together at some point, uh, maybe 5-10 years down the line, would be possible?
For me, it's a two ways. First of all, you have my friends that I grow up with that they are gathered all around the world: Germany, Spain, Chile, Argentina, Vietnam, United States, now India.
India.
Yeah, of course. And a good thing about us is that most of us left the country with the arms open to get new insights, new information, and new experience. So when we get together, it will be okay, man, what you learned there? Because you were there in Germany learning something incredible. What you learned. And when we gather, at least online, we talk to each other about life experiences in different countries, and it's really enriching and fulfilling because everyone has the same unique experience living in those countries and how they and take to themselves and how they make them those experience a better person. That's really good, and I think that will be a fulfilling experience when you get back in touch, really touch with your friends. Hey, you have the other side of the coin. Sorry, that is the Venezuelans that still wanna be Venezuelans everywhere and just gathering with Venezuelans and just wanna eat arepa all day and not have the opportunity. They don't give the opportunity to themselves to open to new experiences. It's also good because sometimes you're in a foreign country and you really need your touch, you know, you need to speak to your people, eat your food, have the same conversation and everything. But for me, it's a good experience, but it's not going to teach me, and it's not going to make me better because I already passed through that. And sometimes the good thing is that I'm saying this from my point of view: when you step aside of your culture and you see it from another perspective, you can see the good things and the bad things of your culture.
Right.
And
It gives you like an outside perspective.
yeah, totally. And we have things that we should not do as a society and as a friends and stuff like that, but it's part of us.
I mean, like, if you see honestly, your grandfather was Italian, right?
Yeah,
So you are in some part like 1/8 Italian, or like I don't know if you have
yeah,
there is more Italian heritage, but in the last 1 or 2 generations, then you became Venezuelans, but you are still Italian in a way, and now they're in Spain, and your brother had a kid recently, so he has Spanish nationality, I guess, the way
Italian.
Italian. Okay.
Yeah, Europe, and already you can enter all Europe. Yeah.
No, but like the passport, like you never know. Like in the next 10 years, like different. Like today, Europe is united. You never know. Like they
Hmm.
separate at some point. So like that nationality might come into play at at a further stage, later stage. Yeah,
Totally. Yeah.
but so this concept of like like I'm Indian, you're Venezuelan, or like so are you really Venezuelan or are you Italian or are you European? So these like tags that we kind of assume because we are born somewhere, and the idea to carry them all their life. I think we most of all, like a lot of people do realize when they travel to different places that these identifiers like don't really matter that much apart from like helping you maybe like with documents, or like how strong your like government is. It sort of gives you certain privileges, but at a humanitarian level they don't really like matter.
No, we
So
are all the same, and we realize about that together also. You come from India, I come from Venezuela, and actually we
we
had a similar life. You remember?
yeah, we knew nothing about like each other's countries, like I would say at that time, but like our lives were, and like completely different cultures and languages, everything, but we had like very similar lives, and we could like connect
Totally.
at that, like with that. So I think I don't know what's going to happen with Venezuela in the coming years, but I hope like you did, and so many people, other people, that people are like able to redefine themselves, and and wherever Venezuelans go, like people know their story, understand them, and try to integrate them into their communities. So
Yeah, that would be the best.
I would really like to thank you for this little chat we had.
Yeah,
I
we talk a
hope
lot.
yeah, I hope like people kind of understand your viewpoint, and at least try to know more about what is happening there, and not just what they see in the news, like to see the humanitarian aspect of it. And we can like help people in different countries, like who are wherever Venezuelans are, so that people can be friendly towards them, and be humane, most of all. I
Yeah,
would
thank you for the invitation. Really, I had a great time,
I would also
as
like to
always.
yeah, we always had a great time. I hope to see you
Yeah,
soon though.
yeah,
I would
of
like
course.
to also mention we are like working with a foundation based in Colombia called Comparte por una Vida. It means like share for a life. That's working towards like social integration, welfare, health, education, access to clean water at like a family level in Colombia, and helping the immigrants and refugees reestablish themselves. So I'll put the link in the description, and you can
Cool.
connect with them, know more about the projects, and if you can, and you know, donate to the cause, help them out wherever you are, and hope to see you guys soon. And please
Yeah,
do comment and share the video. And if anyone wants to come forward, share their story, uh, it's a welcome with open arms, and hopefully we can like improve things together, make a better world. So
really
thank
good.
you, Mario, and have a great
Thank you,
day.
Sam.
Hope,
Have a
uh,
great day. Also, good night there.
greetings to Yula.
Ah, of course.
Okay, bye bye.